Well, around 1 million customers of a popular airport parking company are being warned their personal information may have been compromised during a massive data breach. Park and Fly says they had a breach between July 11th and the 13th. The company says its platforms were fully restored within 5 days. It says the leaked information may include names, addresses, and the Aeroplan and CAA numbers of about 1 million customers. Credit card and payment information of customers were not compromised. Let's bring in Claudiu Popa, certified cybersecurity and privacy expert and author of the Canadian Cyber Fraud Handbook. Claudiu, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
These attacks seem to be happening on a more and more regular basis, or is that just me working in news? But it feels like we're seeing more of these.
It's true. There's definitely a lot more attacks, but there are also a lot more detections. So although the public is being desensitized to just the vast volume of hacking that is taking place, it's also true that companies are able to detect attacks on a more frequent basis. And that's why we feel like we're being deluged with these things. Plus, some of these attacks are monumental in nature, and that's the case with this 1 million victim hack.
So what's a normal hack? Like what might we see with something like that, a smaller one?
So smaller hacks are typically of the nature where a business is infected with some piece of malicious software or malware, and they typically steal information that does not belong to customers, and so we never hear about it. But when it does belong to individuals, to Canadians, to citizens, we necessarily need to be notified, whether it's through the company itself, as the law mandates, or through the Privacy Commissioner as they perform an investigation.
And which is the more dangerous of the two? I mean, obviously both have severity to them, but is there one that's more dangerous than the other?
That's an excellent question. The more dangerous of the two is the one that takes the longest. The most important thing for victims is to find out as soon as possible so they can take steps. In the case of this particular breach, it took 3 weeks for victims to start being notified. And unfortunately, that's a long time because very valuable assets were lost. In this case, it was the Aeroplan numbers. And we have seen notably with some of Pat Foran's excellent CTV investigations that a lot of these Aeroplan number hacks are extremely valuable. In some cases, people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to gather hundreds of thousands of miles. And in this case, 1 million people have had their personal information plus Aeroplan numbers compromised. So it's a big deal.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned we might not hear about a lot of them. How many do we not hear about of breaches of various kinds?
Well, it's estimated that the vast majority, of about 95% of data breaches, is what we don't hear about. So it gives you an idea of the sheer scale of data breaches. I mean, there are organized crime syndicates that make a living off of this, so they do this on a minute-by-minute basis. And in many cases, if they don't want organizations to find out, they simply burrow into their systems and remain undetected for as long as it takes. A recent study was done that estimated that it takes 280 days or thereabouts to detect a hack or a breach. Well, as you can imagine, if it takes 280 days, well, by that time, most sensitive information in the company will have been stolen and potentially even used for fraud or identity theft, et cetera.
And before we go, is there anything people can do to protect themselves from something like this?
Always look for the availability of multi-factor authentication. In cases of companies that don't offer it, make sure you demand it. In cases of, let's say, Aeroplan or Air Canada accounts where they do have multi-factor available, be sure to turn it on and try to aim for authenticator apps that give you a little code which will supplement your password in order to log in using two methods of identification instead of just one.
Okay, Claudio, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Claudiu Popa is a certified cybersecurity and privacy expert.